The system board is here. Yes, this looks good.
Let's get taking out the old motherboard that we've got in here. So the first thing we're going to do is disconnect all of the connections that are on the board, take the CPU heatsink off, and then we can undo what we've got on the board here, which are 1, 2, 3, 4 hex screwdriver heads. And then the board slides backwards and you can lift it out so that it can come out of this slot here, making a swap over relatively straightforward. Right, the board should slide that way. And it does! And the board is out. ILO settings for the new board. Now, swap over the CPU. Everything back in place. Yes! Victory! It was the motherboard after all! Yes! Right, we got the server to boot. It's working. The motherboard change has been a success. Now the video was going to go on and show you how I was going to load the operating system on the server, but I've discovered something that's going to completely change the direction of where the rebuild's going, and we're going to come to that a little bit later down in the video. But before we get to that part, I want to go through the BIOS settings with you first, show you how that works now that we can get to post, and then we're going to reveal something that's come up and shown itself that I was totally not expecting and is going to dramatically change the whole direction of where the build goes.
Next into the BIOS, and we're going to set the date and time on the server, and we're also going to set the boot order of the server. So first thing we're going to do is press F9 to get into the BIOS. Okay, we're in the BIOS. So we're going to go into the first setting, which is date and time. Make sure the date and time's right on the server. Let's get that set. Next, we want the boot order of the server, so that it will boot from USB key, because that's what we're going to use next. Down to the USB drive key, select it, set its boot order to 1. Now when we put a USB key into the server, it's going to boot off the USB key. And then we're going to exit the BIOS and press F10, save that.
While the server was booting, I turned my back for a second and I hadn't put the USB key in, and then suddenly this appeared on the screen. There's already an operating system on this. I've bought a server that's got somebody's old data on it. So the next thing we're going to do in this build is find out what have we actually got here on this server. And for that, we're going to have to use some special tools, because if you look on the screen now as I show you, it's set to Control Alt and Delete, and I don't have the administrator password. But there is a way we can get past the administrator password and get into this server, and that's what we're going to do now. The tool we're going to use is called HIRENS Boot CD. Now this usually came on a CD-ROM, except nobody uses CD-ROMs anymore, and I'm surprised most people have even seen one. What we're going to do is use a tool called Rufus to write the image of the CD-ROM onto a USB disk, and then we're going to boot the server from that USB disk. Now some people say that these tools are really tools that are used by hackers. Me?
No.
Oh, okay. No, that's not true. What the HIRENS Boot CD-ROM does is enable us to load a Windows environment that's full of diagnostic tools that we can use to repair a server that was offline or malfunctioning or had some corruption. Now in the case here, what we're going to do, we're going to use that tool to enable us to see what data is on this server, because if this server contains any kind of personal data, I need to get back in contact with the person I bought this from and ask him whether this server belonged to them. And if it did belong to them, whether they need that data back, because that's what we've got to do under UK law with GDPR. Now, if they didn't own that server, what I'm going to do then is wipe all the data that's on this server to make sure that whatever's on there is gone forever.
I have the Windows 11 VM open and ready to go. I'm going to insert the USB stick in now, and we can create the Rufus disk.
Windows VM. Let's get started with the HIRENS Boot CD to the USB disk. Okay, it's going to write all of the CD onto the USB disk so we can boot the server up from a USB disk rather than a CD-ROM, because I don't have a CD-ROM writer anymore. Not many people do. I mean, I could pick one up on eBay, I suppose, and be super authentic about it and make a CD-ROM. But let's be honest, this is faster and easier for the purposes of what we're going to do today and showing you how we're going to get into a mini Windows XP environment on the server and have a look and see if there's any data on those hard disks. The eagle-eyed of you might have spotted then a Microsoft Windows Defender error message popped up on the screen and flew back across. That's because some of the tools that are on HIRENS Boot CD are considered by antivirus products as a threat. However, that doesn't necessarily mean they are. They're only a threat if you were to use them in a threatening way. Some of the tools on there enable you to do things such as reset passwords for administrator accounts, and that would be seen as a hacking tool, so therefore it's seen as a threat, and that's why you saw that slide past and pop up on the screen. This is quite common when you work with these kind of security tools, because security tools can be used for good or for bad, and in this case the antivirus product doesn't know whether you're good or bad, so it does what its job is to do, which is to say, hey, this is a bad use of the tool, and so you saw that pop up there on the screen. Right, it's all done, ready to go. I'm going to close this off, eject the USB stick and get it into the server.
This is the actual screen itself. So we'll go down and we'll choose Mini Windows XP. And that's what you're going to see load up on the screen now. What this was is a version of the actual XP operating system that Microsoft created, and it was called a PE environment. And it's an environment where you can pre-boot the operating system. And here we are. We now have a version of Windows XP that we can use to see if there's any data on these disks. Opening Windows Explorer, and yes, there we go. On the right hand side of the screen you can see we've got a Windows installation. So yes, we have got data on this disk. Now what I'm going to do now is go back over to the ILO and show you how we're going to get past the administrator's password for this operating system when the server boots up, using a technique that you can use physically accessing any server if the disk isn't encrypted. What we're going to do is utilize a function called sticky keys, which is what you get when you press the shift key 5 times. This app is launched, it's called Sticky Keys. What we're going to do is use the Rufus bootable USB to go back in and change the executable that's called sethc.exe and swap it for command.exe. So when we press shift 5 times, command prompt will load up, and when command prompt's loaded up, it has system privileges, which means we can then change the administrator's password. Back in the Mini Windows XP system now, we're going to rename sethc.exe into seth.exe.old because I want to keep a copy of that file to put back when I'm finished. Now we're going to copy command.exe and name it sethc.exe. So when we press the sticky keys 5 times, we're actually going to load the command instead. I hit Control-Alt-Delete. Now we press sticky keys 5 times, which means we can change the administrator password. And we do that with this command, net user administrator, and then our password. Complex password is needed. Success. Press Control-Alt-Delete. Now you can see that operating systems of Windows 2003 era were not secure if you have physical access. If you could get access to the server physically, get a USB key in it, and you could load up that Mini XP from HIRENS Boot CD, you were able to hack straight directly into the operating system and bypass the administrator account in the domain.
In order to reproduce the server faithfully from what it was back in the day, I've gone and got myself a Microsoft Intellimouse, which here has got the old school twister, that's it, ball. Inside of here, there were switches that the ball clicked onto when you moved it around. So if you're a younger person watching this and you've just only ever used the mice with a laser at the bottom of it, this is what we used to have to use back in the day. And you just have to clean these regularly inside because they just gunk up with loads of goo and stuff like that. It's looking a bit knackered, to be honest. Here you can see it's sort of a bit nyeh. And that, look at that. It's rubbish, isn't it? I'm going to strip this apart at some point and see if we can fix it and get this back to a little bit more of its glory, because it's looking a bit sorry for itself. Now, in the case of this server, I've discovered that this used to belong to an organization. So I need to check with the person who bought it to see whether it was their data. And you can see on screen now, I got in contact with the eBay seller, and they came back and told me that no, they picked it up at car boot sale. What we're going to do next is go through the wiping of this server. We're going to use one of the tools off the HIRENS Boot CD to completely erase all the data from the server so that it's gone forever and we can start to put our fresh operating system on it. I can choose now Dariks boot Nuke to wipe the disk. This loads up a Linux app for this purpose. I'm going to press enter here because I want to get into the interactive mode. And Linux loads up its kernel, and soon we'll be able to wipe the disks. I'm going to wipe all of the partitions on the disk. And then F10 to get started. That's going to go through the process now of a 3-time round of wiping it. We're not going to sit here and watch it because it's going to be a long time.
The hard drive's failed in the server. In the next video, we're going to remove that hard disk, take the 2 existing disks, and then build an array for installing the operating system on. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up for the like and subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment about what you'd like to see me do next or what you think about the video so far. It means the world to me if you do that. That'd be great. And I'll see you on the next one.